It was late afternoon when Ella sat down in the break room, taking a deep breath as she plopped down on the worn leather couch. Her feet ached from hours of running back and forth in the humid Mississippi heat, her apron stained with syrup and grease. She looked out the window, watching the slow-paced world of Meridian drift by. The sun was sinking low, casting long shadows over the cracked streets. The diner buzzed with the hum of conversation, the clinking of silverware, and the sizzle of waffles on the grill. She hadn't expected much from this job. Waitressing at Waffle House wasn't exactly glamorous, but it was steady. Her paycheck wasn't much, but it was something. And with the rent due and bills piling up, she could at least count on the tips. Ella wasn't ungrateful for her work, but some days felt like a grind. The regulars came in, ordered the same greasy plates of food, and left without so much as a thank you. The strangers, however, were the ones who left her wondering about the world outside of this small town bubble. That Thursday morning, the man walked in. He wasn't a regular. He sat at a booth near the window, eyes scanning the menu like he'd never seen a Waffle House before. Ella had never seen him around town, and she knew everyone. His clothes were simple, a blue button-down shirt, pressed and clean, khaki pants, and a pair of shoes that looked new but not too flashy. He had a scruffy beard, his hair a little longer than most men around here, and a calm, quiet energy about him. Ella approached, wiping her hands on her apron. "What can I get you today?" she asked, offering her best waitress smile. The man looked up, his deep brown eyes meeting hers. "I'll have the All-Star special, please, and a coffee to start." "Coming right up." She moved quickly, making sure the coffee pot was full, then returned to his table. When she refilled his cup, their eyes met again, and he smiled faintly, a gesture that was simple but kind. Ella found herself almost caught off guard by the warmth in his smile. By the time his meal was finished, the man had barely spoken. He nodded at her when she checked in on him, but most of the time, he stared out the window, lost in thought. It was the way some people looked when they were traveling through, just passing through the town without really noticing it. She couldn't blame him. That's how she often felt. When he was done, he laid cash down on the table. Ella went to clear the table expecting the usual, maybe $1 or $2 in tip, but when she saw the total, her breath caught in her throat. It was a $100 bill. She quickly glanced around the diner to make sure nobody had been watching. There was no way this man had meant to leave that much. She picked up the bill slowly, turning it over in her hands. There was no note, no words, just a crisp green paper. As she placed the bill in her apron pocket, Ella felt a strange mix of gratitude and confusion. That kind of generosity wasn't something she was used to, and for a moment, she almost wondered if it was some kind of a mistake. But he was already gone when she looked out the window, his car disappearing down the road. Later that night, she sat in her small apartment staring at the $100 bill on her kitchen table. It was too much. She didn't deserve that. There had been some mistake. But the more she thought about it, the more she couldn't shake the feeling that maybe it wasn't a mistake at all. Maybe it was just someone who gets it, she thought. Maybe he just saw me working my butt off trying to make it. It was the best tip she'd ever gotten by far. A few days later, Ella found herself at the local coffee shop after work. She was tired, but the late-night quiet felt comforting. As she sat with her cup scanning through her phone, a familiar face appeared at the door. It was the man from Waffle House. He didn't see her immediately, but when he did, he waved. "Well, if it isn't my favorite waitress," he said with a slight grin. Ella blinked, surprised. "You remember me?" He smiled a little sheepish. "I think so. You were the one who served me breakfast the other day. The waffles were excellent." Ella laughed softly. "Well, I do my best." She watched him walk over to her table and take a seat. His eyes curious but not intrusive. He didn't seem like the type to invade personal space. "Did you enjoy the rest of your day here?" she asked, trying to make small talk. "It was fine. I was just passing through, really. But your waffles, they were definitely the best I've had in a long time." Ella nodded, still processing the fact that he'd remembered her. "I'm glad to hear that. You didn't have to leave such a huge tip, though. I don't know if you meant to leave that much." The man blinked, clearly confused. "What do you mean?" She shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "You left a $100 bill. I thought it was a mistake, but..." His eyes furrowed slightly. $100? No, that's not right. I usually leave a decent tip, but not that much." Ella felt her stomach drop. "You don't remember leaving it?" He shook his head. "I don't. I'm sorry if I messed up, but I honestly don't recall giving that much." She stared at him, confused. How could he not remember? It wasn't something she could easily forget. That kind of generosity, especially from a stranger, was rare. That's okay, she said, swallowing the disappointment. I don't know. I've never gotten a tip like that before. It was a lot. He smiled kindly, not offering any further explanation. Well, I'm sure you deserve it. I'll make sure to tip better next time, I suppose. The week passed, and Ella couldn't get the strange encounter out of her mind. She was careful with the money she'd gotten, as much as she could. The bills were still piling up, but that $100 seemed to hang over her like an unexplainable weight. Then, 2 days before the end of the week, a bill came in the mail. It was from her electricity company, the final notice. She stared at the number printed at the top of the page, her hands trembling slightly as she held the envelope. It was an amount she had been dreading, $250. There was no way she could pay it, not without missing rent. It felt like one more thing out of her control. Then, without thinking, she pulled out the $100 bill from the man and glanced at it, running her fingers over the smooth edges. And suddenly, she understood. She sat there, staring at the bill and the number on the envelope, doing the quick math in her head. With the money she already had, and with the tip, it was the exact amount that she needed to pay the electricity bill. She could pay it. She could pay it all, and she wouldn't have to scrape by this month. Ella took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. It felt like a weight had been lifted from her chest. When she returned to Waffle House the following morning, she was in a better mood than she had been in days. As she stepped behind the counter, the bell above the door jingled. A familiar figure walked in. It was the man. He smiled as soon as he saw her, and this time, she didn't wait for him to speak. She walked straight up to him. I don't know how it happened, she said, but your tip, it was the exact amount I needed to pay my bill. It's like it was meant to be. The man's face softened, his eyes thoughtful. He didn't say anything for a moment, but when he did, it wasn't in the way she expected. Sometimes the world gives you exactly what you need just when you need it. He said it quietly, almost as if speaking to himself. Ella blinked, taking in his words. She still didn't understand it all, but she felt a deep sense of gratitude for the stranger who had unknowingly changed the course of her week. As he stood to leave, she gave him a nod, a small smile on her face. Thank you, she said genuinely. He gave a small wave, as if to say it was nothing, but to her, it meant everything. Thanks for tuning in to Fireside Stories. If you want even more stories, remember to like and subscribe. And we'll see you the next time that we all gather around the fire.